Well, let's jump in. We're in this series. Last week, we started it called Good News. Ridge crushed it, did a great job setting up this entire series. And really the concept, that he brought is that, Jesus shows up and we had this certain expectation of him. And it didn't turn out the way we wanted, which was the bad news. But the good news is that Jesus exceeds our expectations and does far more than we can ever imagine. So what we're doing is we're looking in the book of Luke at several encounters where bad news occurred and what seemed to be bad, and then good news steps in. And so that's what we're doing. We're going to look at this good news. And everybody loves good news, right? I mean, today the good news is not, the bad news was we lost an hour's sleep. Yes. The good news is it won't be dark at 4:30. We might get like a 7 o'clock light. That extra light for me, man, is a game changer, to say the least. Even more good news, after 25 years and 36 divorces, The Bachelor TV series seems to be over. See, I'm checking the audience because that's not true at all. But I was wondering how many are hearing that for the first time. I saw a couple ladies in here start to tear up, and they're like, no, what am I going to do? It's my favorite godless TV show on the planet. What a very holy, godly way to meet somebody, right? Anyway, I'm sorry that I gave you bad news. It's going to be on again, I'm sure. Some other morons out there who want to get divorced really, really quickly. So here, would you agree with me? The best good news are those good newses that are surprises. They're unexpected. And I've learned this, the greater the surprise or the unexpected nature of something, the better the good news, right? So about 3 years ago, I was able, and you're going to see this, I'm in the video. Don't look at me. I mean, that's, first of all, there's so many problems. But I am doing everything I can to keep it together, okay? So that's why I look like a dork. And Ridge has reminded me several times of how stupid I look on this video. And that's fine, but it's not about me. It's about what's happening. This is Christmas 3 years ago. Take a look.
Just look. It's okay. Look inside.
What is it? Is it alive?
Oh, mercy.
Haynes, you have a dog. You have a dog right now.
She is cute, isn't she? Keep it together, Chris. Keep it together. Don't lose it. And why are they focusing the camera on me? It's about my daughter. So yeah, that was a great moment 3 years ago. And there's several weird things there you probably picked up on quickly. So one of the first thing people ask is, why did she say, is it alive? And why is she, she gets it, she realizes it's alive, but it still hasn't sunk in until my sweet daughter-in-law said, you have a puppy, right? And then she loses it. Now, why did all of that happen that way? Let me give you the backstory on the puppy, because that will then make more sense to this. See, in the Roop house, we have one rule: no pets. There are some other rules, but they are way farther. Don't hit your brother, don't steal, don't lie. Those are way lower. Number one, no pets. Now listen, I'm just not an animal person. I know, and immediately about 100 people, 1,000, everybody now says you're a loser. I get it. I know the world thinks animals are people and blah, 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 whatever. I'm just not that guy. I'm not a pet guy. I eat them. They're delicious. I just don't keep them in the house. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Relax. I'm just kidding. I do eat them. We all eat them. You eat cows and chicken. They're animals too. Why can you eat one and not the other? That's all. I mean, stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop. I'm just kidding. Seriously, don't send me the email. I'm doing that just to get a rise out of you. I don't care. Here's the truth. Here's the truth. Number one, I like money, convenience, and time more than I do pets. That's just the truth. I mean, that's my value standard. I enjoy those things more, and that's okay. That's me. You don't, that's fine. I don't care. You're not a good steward of life. That's fine. I don't care. No, I'm just kidding. I'm seriously. That's my rule. My kids all know that. We don't talk about it. It doesn't happen. Nothing. Now, my daughter has for years, she's written me letters. She's done, one time after a life group, she and her friend were in a back room and she wrote a speech. And so after life group, in front of everybody, she gives me a speech on why she should have a dog. And here's the truth, and it's true. I value money, convenience, time more than pets. But here's something I learned. I love my daughter more than time, convenience, and animals and all the rest of that, right? That's true. Yeah, see, there's a good ending to it. And if you're wondering, I like my dog. His name's Bandit, and we get along. He's a good dog. We've been very blessed because if it had been a bad dog, he wouldn't be here right now. Just kidding. Gosh, everybody gets so worked up. I know, I can already see the emails. I don't want to see them, so don't send them. What I'm trying to say is that's true. The reason that was such a huge surprise, the reason she was so happy, she's overwhelmed, she had no hope of ever getting a dog. And that's why she was like, is it real? Because she knew, I'm not getting a dog. And then she thought, okay, well, this is some kind, I get to play with it for a day or something. And then my daughter-in-law lets her know, no, it's yours. And then she loses it. Oh my gosh. And she's beautiful, isn't she? Wasn't she a cute little girl? She's a keeper. So that's what I want to talk to us about today. I want to talk about the surprise of good news. I want us to think about this. And we've been looking in the book of Luke, who is written by this physician named Luke, and kind of discovering some of the bad news, good news things that happens there in that text. So let's pick it up. We're going to look at Luke chapter 5, 27 through 32. And this is an instance where very similar situation happens in the sense of hopeless situation where God or Jesus then steps into this moment. So let's take a look. Luke chapter 5, 27 through 32. So after this, he went out and he saw a tax collector named Levi sitting at a tax booth, and he said to him, follow me. Leaving everything, he rose and followed him. And Levi made him a great feast in his house, and there was a large company of tax collectors and others reclining with him at the table with him. And the Pharisees and the scribes, they began to grumble and at the disciples, saying, why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners? And Jesus answered them, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. And I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. So I want to unpack this kind of verse by verse. So we'll go ahead and put 27 back up here, and we're just going to kind of look at some key aspects to this and show you kind of what happened. So again, verse 27, it says, after this, he went out and saw a tax collector named Levi sitting at a tax booth, and he said to him, follow him. So the key part here that I want to first start off with is this idea of he saw a tax collector. And so what does that mean, a tax collector? Now, the interesting thing is if we took the IRS, right, and we put them into a person, that's kind of what Levi would be, except for worse. The IRS, nobody likes to deal with them. Have you ever tried to call the IRS? Now that's a nightmare. I've had to do this several times. I won't say why, but it wasn't good. But really, it's just a nightmare. And they don't care. You talk to a person on the phone, it's just a job, whatever. They deal with people who are angry at them all the time. They're good at it, as a matter of fact. It doesn't matter. This guy was far worse than any idea that we have. So let me explain how tax collection happened back then. Tax collection in that day and time, so in a region, a person would apply and make payments. They'll bid, basically. It's like an auction, if you will. They would auction for the job of tax collector and invest their own money to be able to get the position of tax collector. Now, what moron pays, right, for a job? Hey, I like that job. I'll give you money if you let me have it. Now, why would people do that? The reason they would do that is because then they collect taxes with the government's power behind them to collect those taxes. So now once they get the position, their job is to try to get as much as they can out of somebody above and beyond what they owe, and they skim that for themselves off the top. And the more that they could skim, the better living they had. And listen, these guys did really, really well. And those that really figured out how to get the most out of people did it because they had the government behind them pushing this thing. So it's a very corrupt system. Everybody knows it, right? And so that's who we're dealing with here, this idea that he becomes this tax collector. And this is the crazy part about it. When he becomes a tax collector, Levi, he becomes a tax collector in his region. So you bid on it for your area, right? And then you get it. So all the people in his district that he's taking tax money from are his own people, his neighbors, the store that he would go get his stuff at. He's collecting taxes from them, the fishermen that brought the fish in, his family members. So he quickly becomes one of the most hated and despised people in the area. A guy who's in this area now all of a sudden collecting taxes from them. Yeah, he's very prosperous. He has a lot of money. He's rich, but he ain't got any friends. People don't like him. They talk about him. Listen, if you're a tax collector in that society, your value and worth in their mindset, in the people's mindset, you're treated on the same level as they would treat a prostitute. I mean, that's kind of what you get to. You're either a tax collector or a prostitute, and it was really, really bad. Levi, and I want you to get this, that's the mindset of the people, not the reality or truth. The reality is that Levi is no different than you and me, right? He's a guy who made a decision to make some poor choices, and yeah, he has sin, but his sin is more noticeable than yours and mine. That's really the difference, the level of it. So I think that if you try to understand the level of what he's going through on such a magnified level of what everybody's helping him to remember, the result of his sin results in him losing relationships with people, and then he's distanced from God in his own mindset. His parents grew, when they're raising him up, they had a dream for him to be, a Jewish kid, and be a good Jew and to do these good things. And all of a sudden, he turns out to be a tax collector. It's not like a parent's dream. Even though he had a lot of wealth, they were hated, right? And so that's who he was. And before we can fully appreciate and comprehend good news, I've learned this. We have to understand and fully comprehend the bad news. And I don't think some of us understand the gravity and weight of the really, really bad news. And let me tell you what the bad news is here in this particular story. The bad news is this: you are a sinner. We are sinners. I mean, that's the bad news. Now, here's the problem with that word. We use it a lot. We throw it around a lot for different things, and so it loses its gravity and it loses its weight because, oh, you're a sinner. Well, most of us kind of accepted that. Yeah, some of us kind of are proud of it, right? We live in it. We lean in on sinfulness. Yeah, I'm a sinner. Check me out this weekend, right? I get it, The weight of that word is kind of lost. Let me just explain it to you and what it means and the concept of it. Sin is this concept of, there is a way and a path that we're to go, and we say, nah, I think I'm going to choose a different way. I'm going to choose something different. God has a plan for you. He says, I got a different plan. It's really when you make life and choices about you rather than what's best or what's right. And when it becomes about you, and ultimately, another explanation of it is there's a mark you're shooting for, right? And when you miss it, that's sin. I want to do this and then I miss it, or I should do this and I miss it. And when you miss that mark, it's a sin. Now, so I don't want to overcomplicate it. Yes, some things are really reprehensible, and we go, wow, even culturally, people who don't believe, it's funny, there's a standard for them, and it's even, that was really bad. They really stepped out of it. And those of us who have kind of some guardrails, that's when you step outside those guardrails. But here's the significance of sin and why you need to understand the gravity and the weight of it. When we do that, sin in its very nature is a relationship breaker. And sin, what it does is it kind of breaks relationships horizontally and vertically with God. And that's why it's a big deal. That separation that happens, or this severance, or this gap that's created in these relationships becomes a tremendous, tremendous problem. So what I want to do is, let's take just a real quick second and look at the next part of this, because this is why it's significant. He understands that he's a sinner better than most. He's reminded of it daily by the broken relationships all around him. His is more noticeable. It's more significant. He's in isolation, right? And so when this next part of the story happens, it's why it's such a huge surprise. It's why it's such good news. And I'm going to show you how good in a second, but take a look. Let's go back. After this, he went out and he saw a tax collector named Levi sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me," right? That's the key part that's strange. Jesus says to him, "Follow me." Now again, keep in mind, he knows the gravity of his sin. He doesn't feel like, you remember my daughter? I'm not getting a dog. That's ridiculous. I'll never get a dog. It's clear. It's the number one rule, right? This guy, I'm not going to have, there's no religion for me anymore. My faith, gone, right? My family, friends, gone. There's no hope for me. He is at his booth doing what he's doing, collecting taxes. Jesus shows up and Jesus says to him, "Come follow me." Now here's what makes this really, really crazy. What makes it a huge surprise, what you would think is that he's a bad person, and he feels like he's a bad person. Nobody likes him. He's alone. So he starts seeking out God. He starts seeking out people, pursuing it, trying to figure out how I want to make this right. Now he's gave up on that. And what's so crazy about this story is Jesus pursues him. It's not him pursuing Jesus. And I think sometimes we forget that. We forget that Jesus is pursuing us. He wants a relationship with us. He's coming and looking and trying to find a way to connect with us. Yeah, it's true. The bad news is we're sinners. That's a fact. But there's good news. And the good news is that Jesus pursues you. Even in the midst of your sinfulness, Jesus wants a relationship with you. He's looking for us. And this is unbelievably important, because when he calls him, and I want you to get this too, many of us, we feel like we're alone and we have no hope. But when he pursues us, he's calling us out of something. And what makes this incredible is the fact that when he comes to him at the bottom of all of this stuff, it's just insane. It's a miracle in the sense that he calls him out, but not just him. All the people he's calling out are typically the people that are at the bottom. I've just kind of realized this about faith as a whole. Typically the people who really get it and become followers of Jesus and really go on to do what we're getting ready to talk about in a second, the next part of this verse, the people who really get that are the people who are at the bottom oftentimes, and life's kind of falling apart and all this stuff, or that it doesn't make sense. Because listen, there is no way you would get a fisherman, a tax collector, a zealot to all come together around a common goal and a mission. First of all, the tax collector is going to be hated by all of them. I mean, he's taking money from the fisherman as he gets off the boat. Hey, there's this transaction that goes on. Fishermen would have to pay up right there at the dock. That booth that we're talking about is kind of a long story, but it's over near the center, near the docks where people are coming in. So how in the world does that even happen? It's a miracle. When God transforms people, he changes them, he brings them together. And that's what makes this such good news. And what makes it so crazy is how God takes different people at their lowest moments, or at these moments when they at least realize who they fully are. And he says, "Hey, come follow me." And they leave everything behind and come around this common vision. The biggest detail of this whole story is God has no intention of leaving you where you are. The call is always out. And again, I think religion is a huge problem culturally, that many of us we're Christians culturally because we kind of were raised that way, not because Jesus necessarily pursued us, and not necessarily that we know who we are, the truth of who we are, the gravity of sin, and not that we have left anything behind to pursue him. Because listen, here's kind of what Jesus calls him out. And it's not that he's saying, "Hey, Levi, I want to know that you've asked me into your heart. Have you asked me into your heart? Because you just need to ask me into your heart and everything will be better." You know, just, hey, would you start coming to church occasionally? Talk to me when it's convenient, or maybe never. You know, that's kind of modern day Christianity, is this idea. As long as you ask him to come into your heart, maybe do something in the water. I think they call it baptism. Get wet a little bit, swim in front of your friends. I mean, listen, the Bible, I don't even know how we got here. I think we have to. Churches had to dumb it down so that people would actually, say they're doing it, and you have bigger numbers. Because it's not confusing. I mean, when you read it, it's not like it's a mystery that, I don't know what he fully means by that. I mean, it literally says, follow me. And then, I'm not going to mess with you here too much, but check out the next verse, verse 28. It's really clear. And what? And what happened? He left everything. And leaving everything, he didn't say leaving some stuff. Leaving everything, he rose and followed him. Again, it's not mysterious. It's not trying to fool you. He gave up everything. He left his lifestyle, his business, the money, everything that was going, he left it. Said, I'm done. Gets up, leaves everything, and follows him. See, the call that Jesus gives to us, it's called, it's like one of those Christian spiritual words that gets, the meaning gets lost. We're called to repentance. It's not like a scary word. It's just stop doing what you're doing, turn and do something different. I mean, that's all it means. It means turn and go the opposite direction. So when he recognized, I'm in the middle of this mess, there's no hope for me, Jesus comes to him and says, hey, look, come follow me. It's all good. What? You want me to follow you? You don't know who I am. I'm the tax collector. No, it's all good. Come follow me. Okay, if you're saying it, I'm going to leave it all. Okay, come on. And he follows him. He left everything and goes and follows him. All of that stuff. I want you to think about it this way. When Jesus pursues you, right? When he comes and he's pursuing you and he's stepping into your mess, and you know it. You know when it happens because you start feeling convicted about stuff. There's this moment you got, man, things just aren't right. I'm not really doing what I should be doing. He pursues you. Here's the expectation is. This is what he's asking. Will you now pursue him? Because that's what following him means. It means I'm now going to pursue him. Listen, I'm going to pursue him rather than what I have been pursuing that is breaking the relationships between me and God and other people, right? I'm going to stop pursuing that because it's not working. I'm going to pursue him where it is going to work. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. It's not like he's saying I'm going to make it easy. His life's going to be hard. But what he is saying, much like what Reed said last week, yeah, I'm going to pursue you. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be what you think, but it is going to be better. It's going to be better. And do you believe it? And will you lean in on it? All right, so let me give you this other cool little nugget that happens. I'm going to go back to verse 27. Let's go back for 1 second. Let's just see one other thing before I walk away from this. So after this, he went out and he saw a tax collector named what? Levi. And this is interesting, sitting at the tax booth, and he says to him, follow me. So there's some debate that's happened occasionally. People start trying to figure out, well, who's Levi? This sounds very similar to Matthew, the tax collector, doesn't it? And it's because it is. It's a different book, so they're using, you know how this works. And Jesus did this all the time. Simon was the guy who follows Jesus, and Jesus hangs out with him and everything. And eventually Jesus says to him, hey, look, you're no longer going to be Simon, you're going to be Peter. And the reason he changes his name, he gives him a new identity. Our names, our last names especially, is one of these things sometimes that are identifiers. They create our identity and who we are and what we're about. He says, we're going to change. You're no longer Simon. Now you're Peter because, I'm going to build the church on this rock. Peter means rock. Same thing happens here, and it's quite interesting. Levi is going to become, Jesus is going to change his name to Matthew. And why is that significant? What does that mean? The name Matthew means gift from God. And here's the nugget. You ready for this? There's one thing that I think that he was very clear about. There is nothing significant about me. Nothing. My life is awful. I made some really terrible choices. I've lost relationships. I've lost relationships with God. There's no hope. And so at some point, probably much like Simon, at a point of significance, he then says to him, I want to remind you of who you are. I'm going to give you a new name. And it's not even going to make sense. You're not even going to believe it. It's so stupid when you look back at your life. But you are a gift from God. You know what? Changes. See, this is what happens. When he shows up and he pursues you, right? And you decide to then pursue him, it changes who you are. It changes you. And you become something else. Your identity was in this thing before, and God steps in and says, I'm going to give you a new identity. That's where this idea of adoption is. I'm going to adopt you, coming into my family. I'm going to give you a new name. And that's what he does when we pursue him. He changes everything. And that to me is what makes this just an incredible surprise, is that he steps in. That's the nature of the good news. It's so crazy. So let me give you the definition of surprise. And we'll put it up here on screen. And this is why I think it's pretty significant. It's an unexpected or astounding or astonishing event, a fact, or a thing. See, it's surprising is this thing that you're astonished by. It's unexpected. Why would he step in? One, why would he pursue me? Two, why would you change my name? And before, where there's no hope, give me hope. Now you're not only saying that, but now I am a gift from God. And now what's getting ready to happen is he's going to become a gift from God to other people. That is what makes this so surprising. It's so astonishing. It's so crazy. It just doesn't make sense. And the good news is this. What's astonishing and amazing is that God wants a relationship with you in the same way. You are a gift from God. This whole story is for you. We look at it, we look back at what he would do in him, and he's saying, yeah, but I'm going to do that in your life too. Listen, your life may not have the problems that he has. You may not see yourself a sinner like him. You might have some secret things that you don't like to talk about or whatever. But there are some of us who would definitely say, I look at my life, I'm not a gift from God, right? Now, I know you're looking at me and saying, Chris, you're a gift from God because you're beautiful. I get that. But don't look on the outside. We're talking about the inside, right? I'm just kidding. But it's true. Many of us look at ourselves that way. Maybe for some of us it is an exterior issue. And we look at ourselves and we say, I don't look as good as that person, or I'm not as effective as that person. I don't have the gifting of that other person. I look on the inside of me and it's not good. I know what I do and what I think about, right? And that's where God steps into your mess. He wants to surprise you and astonish you and say, hey, yeah, you can follow me too. But it does mean you have to leave something behind if you're going to follow me. It's in that following that you get your new name and your new identity. So what do you do when you get this kind of good news? What do? You throw a party.
Yeah, baby.
I know, he gets it, but Christians do not get this. We are the worst party goers ever. We're the worst party throwers and the worst party goers. And listen, I'm going to offend a bunch of you. This is what I grew up with. If you had parties and stuff, you were a bad person because bad things happen at parties, right? And that's why nobody wants to hang out with you. Because you think fun is a bad thing. I don't get that. I don't. I love to party. I don't love to party with everybody. But I love to party with a few people. I'm at that point in my life. Some of you overwhelm me, Relax a little bit, people. I'm getting old. But that's exactly what happens. This is crazy. This huge party happens. Let's look at verse 29. Let's take a look. And Levi made him a great feast in his house, and there was a large company of tax collectors and others reclining at the table with them. And so this is insane. There's so many crazy things that's getting ready to happen. So Matthew, and this is going back to that whole name thing. So now Matthew, it's just instinctual, right? Jesus comes to him, transforms him. He's now changed. And the first thing he thinks about is, I want my friends to know about this. I want my friends to meet this guy. This is crazy, right? So he throws a party and invites them all there. So the people that are there, it says tax collectors. And my favorite part of this one is, it uses this phrase, let's put it up here, others. Who are the others? Now, there may have been different people, but here's for certain who some of those others were. They were the paid prostitutes. And listen, the only people that would hang out with somebody like these guys are people that had to pay to come hang out with them. And most of those were prostitutes. And so he brings them all in. And we kind of know this too by the reaction of the scribes and the Pharisees that's getting ready to happen here. They're like, what? You know, who does this? It's just crazy. So Jesus is modeling something for us here. And to me, it's the difference between people who embrace Jesus and people who are religious. And there is a difference. Because these religious people, which is scribes and Pharisees, and basically scribes were kind of the teachers and the leaders, and the Pharisees who were the ones who meticulously followed the scribes' teaching. So they would get that title of Pharisee. And so, but in essence, it's just religious people. These religious people all of a sudden get worked up. And so they're all upset about it. But here's the thing, you know, he's at this party and they're all upset about it. Can you imagine today at that party, because of social media and stuff, somebody then snaps the picture, right? They snap the picture, they post it on their timeline on Facebook, they upload it to some Instagram to show the cool picture. Hey, at a party with Jesus, you know, and the prostitutes are in there leaning up against the tax collectors and doing all that stuff, and it gets out. You know who's going crazy, right? The church. Now they're saying, is he real? This guy, is he legit? No, he can't be real. He's going to parties with sinners. These crazy, look at the prostitute. That's a tax collector. He stole money from me. He owes me money. But it's bigger than that, to be quite honest with you. It was a much bigger deal. And that's why verse 30, I'll throw it up here real quick. Verse 30, it says, and the Pharisees and the scribes grumbled at his disciples, saying, why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners? And the reason for this is a little bit deeper. It's a cultural thing. In that day and time, meals were a big, big deal. And in that, I didn't point it out, didn't have time, but it said reclining at the table. Remember, it says they were sitting there reclining at the table. And in that day and time, when you shared a meal with somebody, it was considered very intimate. Some of you guys remember in Revelation where Jesus, the big phrase that says, hey, I'm knocking at the door, and if you'll open, I'll come in and I'll eat with you and you with me. It's this picture, and the reason that term eating is happening is culturally in that day and time, when you shared a meal with somebody, you shared something intimate. And it gets its roots because when you eat food goes into you and it kind of makes you who you are. You know, when you eat food, you become what you eat. And I know that's scary, especially what I ate last night. That's not going to work out. But in general, you get what I'm saying. You eat and it becomes it's this moment of intimacy. So when you're eating with somebody, you're sharing something very intimate, something very very close. And so that's the big shocker here is they're like, look, I know you hang out with them and all this stuff, but you're eating with them. It's unbelievable. And just, you know, kind of rubbing into their, to kind of some of their deep-rooted thoughts and ideas. And so the good news is this. It's just surprising. And I think for us believers, this is the thing I think we need to get. Our traditions and our habits and things, sometimes, it's just always weird to me. You embrace Jesus, you start following Jesus, and how quickly we become religious. And how quick we forget who we were and what Jesus brought us out of that was so important and so significant, but yet not so significant that I should go tell somebody else. It was significant for me, but probably not them. And how quickly we become religious and forget it's not about religion. We're following Jesus, period. That's the difference. There's nothing significant about you, nothing. Remember who you were. It's Jesus in and through you that makes you significant. He's the one who brings meaning and purpose to your life. And that's why, and again, you know, let's close it out with this. Verse 31, 32. And Jesus answered them saying this, because they asked him this question, right? What in the world are you doing? And Jesus responds, he says, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I've not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. I just want to remind you of this. Here's the bad news. You ready? you're a sinner. The reality is that we don't recognize the gravity of that sin. Sin is a huge, really, really big deal. We forget that. Sin breaks relationships. It separates you from people. It separates you from God. It's a relationship breaker. And Jesus steps into that, and then here's the good news. Jesus pursues sinners, right? That's the good news. So I remember many years ago, and this is 10, over 10 years ago, I made some poor choices that devastated one particular relationship with a good friend of mine. And nothing that I could do, no matter what apology I did, it was done, right? And so I had to walk away from that relationship. And it was done. I didn't think about it. I wasn't going to keep pushing it. It wasn't right to do so. It was on my side, right? So, I mean, there was nothing I could do, and they were done. And it was a year ago that about this time, I get a phone call, and this person invites me back in. Now, a lot of us, you know how you go and you see a friend that you hadn't seen in a long time, for whatever reason. You just hadn't seen them in a long time. It's like really good news. They show, hey, we're going to get together. Man, great, that's good news, and you're super excited to go see them, right? But here's what I want you to know. There's a difference between good news and really good news, right? The difference is the nature and the level of the surprise that happens in between. There was no hope in that relationship ever being recovered. I never thought about it. And then a year ago, the relationship is reestablished. And so the difference is if I go see a good friend I just hadn't seen in a long time and we get together, we're excited, we're happy, but it was emotional when we got together because we were reconnecting over something that had, in my world, I don't know about in his world, but for me, that relationship was severed. There was no hope. And so when it was re-engaged, it was just unbelievably emotional. It is still to this day that it's even possible that we have this relationship. It shouldn't even exist. It's insane. It's definitely the greatest picture of grace. And I remember I even said that to him. This is the greatest reminder and picture of grace. One undeserved, shouldn't happen, and now it's here. And that is what Jesus is trying to do in your life. And until you recognize the hopelessness and the gravity of the sin that has separated you from him eternally. I mean, the hope is eternal separation from God. That's the gravity of sin that we sometimes want to water down because and I know it's not culturally popular and all this stuff. It doesn't make it not real. And he steps into it. He says, no, I'm pursuing you. I want a relationship with you. And my question I want to leave with you today is this. When's the last time that you've been surprised by Jesus? When you think about your relationship with him, when was the last time you were surprised by him? I want to take a second. I want to pray for you. Just pray over you. Ask you a few questions to contemplate here in closing. When you think back to your pursuit of Jesus, where did it come out of? Has there been a moment that he surprised you and stepped into your mess? And when was the last time? Father, today as we kind of just reflect on this encounter that you had with Levi's, God, may it remind us of the gravity of our sin. And God, may it remind us of the level of your grace. That regardless of how we perceive ourselves, God, you want a relationship with us and you call us out of that and you give us a new identity and you bring meaning, purpose, direction. It's you that makes us a gift from God. It's you that allows us to go into dark places and around people who are far from you and to be light in darkness. God, would you surprise us again? Maybe for some of us who it's been a long time and we've forgotten and we've become religious going through the motions. God, would you step into it again? Surprise us as we begin to pursue you and use us in a mighty way, we pray. In the name of Christ, amen.